Right after the war, it was about survival, just getting enough food, just staying warm enough, having a roof over your head. We were refugees. Society just broke down. It was divided up into military sections. There was the American sector and the British sector and the Russian sector and French sector. We happened to be within the American sector, and we were very lucky to be in the American sector. There was no food unless you grew it yourself. People lived in bombed-out buildings and cellars. Those who had food sometimes shared it. Sometimes they only bartered it for valuables. Huge numbers of people from the East were forced west. Remember, the Russians took over part of Poland. Poland took over part of Germany, and they were moved out. So you had millions of people on the road, homeless. Many children died. So it was quite unusual that our family survived intact. We found people who took us in, and one of them was the parish in this little village along the Weser River. We trekked there during the night to avoid being strafed. That's where we saw the first Americans. Our family had no home, so the authorities would send us here and send us there. You could, live there, get a room, maybe a kitchen and a room, and you'd stay there for a while until we were able to clear some land and put up a cottage.
And so was it after that you started to hear the stories from your father and from your mother about what?
Even then, I don't recall them talking about it. We were so much in a mode of survival. The only thing that I remember hearing would be, what happened to the Hartmans? Where do you think they are? Because we had gotten very close to them. And I do remember that one day in 1948, one of the Hartmans arrived with a friend with food, with clothing, and with ration stamps. Out of the blue, here she was. And it was a reunion. It was a very wonderful reunion. And here we were in rags, no food, and here they were able to help us. And then we lost contact with them because they started immigrating. They ended up on Cyprus and in Palestine and eventually in the United States. And not until after my father died and I went to Israel did I find out where that still some of them were alive.
Did you see them when you and your mother were in Israel?
We saw two of them, yes. But the Weichmanns were in, one of the Weichmann sisters, they're Hartman, that's their name in the book. She lived in Israel. We never saw her there, but we saw her two sisters. In Denver. They had lived in Denver, and both had a daughter and grandchildren.
What made you decide to write this story of your early childhood?
I always loved stories. I loved writing, and I loved words. Time came when I started writing things down, and then I'm married to an historian who feels it is very important to put these things down. So he encouraged me in the 70s to tape record my parents, siblings, relatives, and eventually the survivors. At times, it was very traumatic, but I had to write through the pain, and that is what I would I would recommend to anybody who has something painful to write about is to go beyond it, to transcend it, and to write the truth. To write what you know instead of what you have learned from somewhere else. You will do much better at writing, if you write what you know, what feels true to you.
You have a picture in your book of your mother looking over the manuscript.
Yes.
What was it like for her? Did she talk with you about it?
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. My mother spoke many languages, among them English. She read it, she critiqued it, she laughed, she cried. And she would say, Druckreif, das ist Druckreif, ready to be printed. I want to see it printed. Well, it wasn't printed until 3 years after she died. But she loved it. She loved it.
You and your mother went to Israel, and
yes.
What happened there? What was that about?
Well, let me back up a little bit.
Please.
After my father died in 1979, I inherited some of his papers. He had also sent me short articles that he had written towards the end of his life about his activities. So I already had some of it in writing. So I wrote to Yad Vashem and asked if they had any records of my father, any documents. And I got a letter back a week later. Yes, we have huge documentation on your father. What we're looking for is more witnesses. Now, how would you find witnesses in 1980, so many years after the war, who are still alive? That was my question. A month later, my mother and I received a letter from Yad Vashem, from the Department of the Righteous, that they had found witnesses in South America. I suppose they needed more witnesses. They already had many letters and documents that dated from 1948 and on. They wanted newer witnesses, I do not know. It's a very thorough process. We got the letter that my father had been honored. And with this document came the honor to plant a tree on the Avenue of the Righteous at Yad Vashem, which is the memorial for the Holocaust. Both my mother and I traveled there in 1983 and planted the tree. We were received very graciously.
What is it you hope people will get from reading this book?
I think my message would be to keep your eyes and ears open, to listen, to look, really deeply look into each other's eyes, and to listen to each other.
Given the state of the world as it is today, what is it you would want to say to people from your experience growing up as a child?
I think I will read something my mother read on her 100th birthday. It is written by Christian Morgenstern. Be brother to all. Help them. Serve them. Is the only goal since he appeared. Even the evil one who is your adversary was once fashioned from light. Be loving. Conquer evil, say the wise. Transform hate into courageous love. Brothers, hear the word so that it may be fulfilled, so that the earth may become God's place. I couldn't say it better.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.